So good evening, everyone. My name is David Monaghan, but you can call me David Monaghan. We're about to begin a panel discussion on the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This evening's discussion will center on separating fact from fiction in the move towards diversity, measuring DE&I, driving transparency, and facilitating real change. I'm joined today by a panel of experts, and I can't emphasize that word enough, experts. I heard them talking backstage, and they have a great depth of knowledge in this field. They are Mary Garvey, VP Cybersecurity and Data Management, JP Morgan. Come on up as I call your name. It's like the Oscars. Sandra Healy, CEO and co-founder, Inclusio. Siobhan Sweeney, Global Diversity, Inclusion and Belonging Leader, HubSpot. And last but not least, Melissa Bosch, DE&I Lead, EY Ireland. Hello, hi. Nice and settled now. So this is a panel discussion on the future of diversity, equity, inclusion. Siobhan, I might turn to you first. So you joined HubSpot in October 2021. How does HubSpot cover diversity, and how is it measured from a global perspective?
Thanks, David. So can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. From a HubSpot perspective, we have 5 strategic priorities as set out by our CEO. One of those is diversity and inclusion. We have a DI&B team that's global, and that's, I guess, the first start. We act as consultants to the business. We have a team as well that looks after the community. In terms of some of the areas that we manage, gender is one of those. We manage race as well, LGBT to name but a few. We work really, really closely with our data analytics department internally, and we would share the measures in terms of how we are doing with our leaders on an ongoing basis. Once a year then, externally, we would publish our results to showcase our journey in terms of DI&B. I'm sorry, if those of you who are not familiar with that acronym, it's diversity, inclusion, and belonging. You can see our report, it's available on our website in terms of the progress that we've made so far.
Fantastic. Sandra, I'm going to come to you now. So you're the CEO and co-founder of Inclusio. It's a data-led diversity and inclusion platform that combines technology, psychology, and artificial intelligence. This is to measure, track, and implement DE&I across organizations. I guess my question is twofold. Where did the idea for Inclusio come from, and how does it help companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Where did it come from? Lots of hard work and frustration with not being able to evidence the good work we were doing around diversity and inclusion in companies. So I've been involved in diversity and inclusion for about 15 years. I spent 20 years of those in the tech industry. You can calculate my age there. And I have been part of driving the change, thankfully, around tech becoming a more diverse and inclusive industry. But one of the things I realised is that I had really clear KPIs on one side of the work I was doing around customer delivery and sales and customer success. And here I was doing this very meaningful work in diversity and inclusion with no way to evidence the impact of the business. And at the time I was studying my master's in organisational psychology. I was learning all around the science and that there is a way to measure culture and D&I. And that got me thinking, there has to be a better way to do this. And is there a way to combine the technology and the psychology together? So it was myself and 10 slides back in 2016. And I made the bold move that I was going to leave tech and I was going to go and build this tech platform. And I went and I pitched to a female founders program. And I describe it as a tumbleweed moment. There was 7 people sitting across the desk, and I was talking about diversity, inclusion, measurement, compliance. And when I stopped, they were just like, what the bloody hell are you talking about? So from that moment, I had to figure out how was I going to make this happen. So thankfully, I had the opportunity to go into Dublin City University I went in there for 5 years and I developed and delivered the strategy around D&I for the university. But while I was in there, we had a plan that we would build, so research, design and build Inclusio together. So 4 years of research and development, backed by Enterprise Ireland, tapping into all the expertise that we could get access to within the university. We have spun out Inclusio in 2020. So it's technology, combining that technology, science and artificial intelligence to bring a scientific, evidence-based approach to diversity and inclusion. And I was talking to the team earlier and I was saying, I describe it as democratizing diversity and inclusion, because what it is it allows every single person in the organization to have a voice, to be counted in a safe way, to have a voice and give feedback to your employer around how you want the culture of the organisation to be and how you want that to shift. And then we have learning around helping people understand what it's like for people who are different from themselves.
That brings me nicely to my next question, which is for Mary. So what is the cost of someone not having a voice? What is the cost of inequity?
Another great question. I think, hopefully me turning my head isn't causing that, is it? Maybe just keep looking this way. Sorry, folks over there. So the cost of not having equity, it's probably something not a lot of people have thought about. It's probably not something, unless you've been directly impacted, it might not resonate with you. So I guess to try and understand the cost of inequality, if we think about the things that we would we all like a society that is fairer? Would we all like a society that is more cooperative? Would we like a society where we have more safety, where our crime rates are lower, where we have equity of inclusion, where people are not feeling disenfranchised? Would we all like a society that feels a bit more inclusive? We would, I'm sure. There's very few people that wouldn't like a better society. So when we don't have equality, when we have inequality, what that leads to is all of the social problems that we see. It affects everybody's health, from their physical health to things like obesity. When we look at the spiraling challenges of mental health and addiction, that is directly related to inequality. It affects your children. It affects everybody around you. There is nothing really that isn't touched by inequality, because it is divisive and it makes us polarized, and that affects the fabric of our society. It undermines our trust in each other. That's why social problems increase, because we don't trust each other, because we're divided. So the cost is massive to us. Now, when we bring it into a business context, the data out there is phenomenal in terms of supporting why we should do things that are inclusive, not only to build your market share. You will have a better understanding of your customer base. Your productivity can go up to increase by almost 50% by increasing your diversity within your teams. You will make better decisions and you will make them faster. So the case out there is so powerful for why we should be doing this in the workplace, to then bring that to the wider society, because in work, we have the best opportunity to meet diverse colleagues, and especially in technology, we're working globally, we're global citizens, we're not isolated to our own little island anymore. How we should be taking that opportunity to teach our children, to teach the people around us how inclusivity and equity will make us better entirely globally. And I guess then that would lead into, what are the things that we can do individually? How can we help each other? How can we be better in work? You might be starting your career, or you might be at the top of your organization, but there are things you can do on a daily basis to improve the experience of those who are not like you. You may have a position of advantage and you don't realize it. I'm white and I'm Irish. I am automatically in a position of advantage, and I need to use that to help bring inclusivity to my organisation and the people who don't have voices in my organisation, who feel like they don't belong. And that's where allyship can be a massive part of what each individual can do. And it doesn't have to be a big explosive thing, but it is how you are aware of who you are, what you do, and how you can help other people by bringing them into the conversation.
That's a very good point. I mean, there's always a risk when we talk about allyship of it just being performative, as opposed to something that is a bit deeper. So Melissa, we were talking about this earlier. What is deep allyship to you, and how can we become better allies?
It's such a great question. So what we tend to do is we do things at a surface level. We love the label. We want to put the label on us, and we want to walk around with it and be proud. But actually, deep allyship is about being that disruptive voice, being that intervening voice in situations where you know that you have that power, where you know that you have that privilege. But it starts with recognizing that privilege. It starts with awareness. So I think it's really important for each individual in this room, and it's a beautiful room, let me say that. Beautiful people, very diverse, love the view from here. But it's really important to start with that awareness of valuing difference. And that means recognizing what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. And that then helps you look at equitable practices. It helps you look at, okay, these are the things that I have. This is how I'm privileged, but this is how I can create access to opportunities for others. We all have that gift. We all have that gift to give. I am a woman of color, foreign national. Well, I identify as Afro-Irish, but I'm privileged. I'm privileged. I can open doors and create access for others. That is a really special thing to do. So it starts with that awareness, and then understanding what are the insider and outsider groups. How are they operating? Why are there insider and outsider groups? Who's in my sphere of the people that I surround myself with? Are they homogenous? How am I adding value to myself as an individual, but also adding value to others? So the 4 questions I love asking is, who's in the room? Who's not in the room? Why aren't they in the room? And how can we get them in the room? Those are the 4 disruptive questions that I'm going to ask you to ask yourself when you're building your teams. Ask yourself when you're putting that project group together. Who's in the room? Who's not in the room? Why aren't they in the room? And how can I get them in the room? And then give them power. Distribute that power evenly. So those will be my nuggets.
Amazing. Yeah, here.
Thank you.
Take away with them this evening. So I'm going to open up to the panel generally now. And I want to talk a bit about some of the myths that we have to challenge when it comes to pushing diversity, creating more inclusive environments. Like we were talking earlier, Melissa, about the idea that the world is a meritocracy and that we're all sort of coming at it from the same position, starting at the same position, which is not true. Is that something you would like to speak a bit more about?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm actually going to ask who believes that we're living in a meritocracy? I know it's a little bit of a facetious question. But we have that idea. We have that idea in our heads. We have that American dream kind of go out into the world and everything's equal and everyone's going to be able to capture that dream. But I'm going to challenge you to actually think about this differently. If you think that this is we're living in a meritocracy or your workplace is a meritocracy, I want you to look at your data. I want you to look at your data as evidence of whether this is a meritocracy or not. We have to challenge our biases all the time in our decision making. Otherwise, we end up with homogenous groups. We want that mix. To the points raised earlier around the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diverse teams, they are going to help you make better decisions. And it means diversity in a very intersectional way, not one-dimensional, but actually thinking about what is the makeup of our firm? What's the makeup of our organization? So my ask is another ask, because I'm going to ask you loads of favors tonight, but the power is in this room to make those decisions. It really is. As individuals, we have that power. Challenge the myth of meritocracy. It's something that we want to strive towards, but in order for us to get there, we need to challenge our own biases.
Fantastic. Wasn't sure whether to... But are there any other myths that we could, that spring to mind that you think need to be put in the dustbin of history?
I think for me, David, what springs to mind is in 2021, I completed my master's in organisational behaviour and psychology. And I did a thesis on why organisations are getting involved in diversity and inclusion strategies. I interviewed 25 people, right from the CEO to the CPO, right down through organisations. And out of those interviews, what was really clear and evident was a lot of companies were getting involved in diversity and inclusion to have it as part of their vision and their mission strategies, to have it when companies and clients were coming to look for tenders. A lot of it pointed to selfish reasons for companies being involved in diversity and inclusion. The one thing that I would say is, and ask for those people in the room here tonight is, so many companies are focused on talent and attracting talent. They want to make sure that it's representing society. And when you look around your offices, does it look like the customers on the streets? Is that what your room looks like? What about those from underrepresented groups? When we're here in Ireland, when we think about migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, when we think of members of the travelling community, when we think of LGBTQI+, what does your office look like? And what are you doing to attract people in? That would be my big takeaway from today.
That sort of feeds into what we were talking about earlier, the performative allyship, the wearing the badge. Yeah. I'm going to now ask, and it's a bit of a big question, what is one piece of advice that you want everyone in this room to take home with them this evening? And I might go to each of you individually. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Go first.
I think a lot of the work we do, particularly when we're working with leadership teams, is around having the discussion that diversity is not other people, right? And inclusion is not other people. And I think we're all saying the same thing here, right? Diversity is all of us. We're all individually different. And inclusion and an inclusive workplace is the place that we all want to work in, right? Nobody, I was reading a study, I think we were talking about it a little while ago, around that being excluded lights up the same part of the brain as physical pain. It's the same as if somebody kicked you. So nobody wants to be excluded. So really it is the environment that we all want to be in. So I think one piece of advice, again, talking about it earlier, you know, I always say to people, don't step over it. If you're in a situation or you're in an environment where things are not going okay for you, you know, go and speak to the people in D&I, go and speak to the HR. Don't leave it behind as somebody else's problem. So, and I think if we all individually were to pick that up and not leave things behind for other people to fix, I think that's really what starts to build that culture of inclusion then in companies.
Excellent point.
I don't mind going next, David. I would say one thing that I say to my leaders is do one thing. When you leave here tonight and you go back to your works, do one thing. Imagine if everybody in this room tonight did one thing. That's how you create a movement. Please use your power and privilege to do that.
Revolutions always start with one germ of an idea.
And we should rehearse this because you stole my thunder. But you know what? It bears repeating because I do think I'll maybe expand a bit on that one thing. There's a lot that you can do. There is so much that you can do to educate yourself. So, for example, in JP Morgan, we have business resource groups that are phenomenal, that provide details on specific allyship. And because we're such a global organisation, we have 10 different BRGs that cover everything from Asia Pacific Islanders to Adelante, which is our Latino and Hispanic community. We have so many resource groups there that have so much information, and I'm sure so many of your organisations have the same. So educate yourselves. Find out what it's like to be somebody different, because if you're white and Irish, you haven't experienced what a lot of your colleagues may have had to go through, and feeling different and having a different language, and you know, the slight little guffaw, oh, you said that wrong, or you don't get our colloquialisms. Don't be that person. Be the person who is mindful that having left your homeland to come here is so brave, and it's something we haven't done ourselves. A lot of us haven't done ourselves, and that's so brave. So be aware of that, educate yourself, figure out how you can do something better. And I'm going to ask all the white men in the room, because you have the power, and it's what you can do with it for good, as everyone has said, that it's not just about speaking up. Some people feel completely disempowered and they are frightened to speak up. So find ways to ask people their opinion, and don't give a negative rebuff. Support them, talk about them positively, talk about them when they're not in the room. Those people who are different need to be brought in at every opportunity.
Love that.
Melissa?
I'm going to let you in on a secret about what I do every single day. I am a disruptive voice. I want you to be a disruptive voice too. I want you to go and think about how things are working in your organizations, and ask the questions, ask the why. Keep curious, keep committed to the process. So keep that commitment. That your curiosity is going to help you develop your awareness. Your commitment is going to show drive and create that consistency that will shape your culture. Lots of C's coming out of me right now. And that is particularly important. It is particularly important. So that curiosity, commitment, and consistency. Because you are going to be challenging your wiring in your brain. You need to be able to put that, now it's not going to be a C, it's going to be a K, kill switch in when you're in situations that you're going to find yourself being biased, and it happens to all of us. So please take a lesson from me around being that disruptive voice. Really important.
This discussion. I want to thank my panel, my panelists.
Yes, we are. We're yours.
Woo! So Mary Garvey, Sandra Healy, Siobhan Sweeney, and Melissa Bosch. Thank you.